Dhirendra Kumar, founder of Value Research, Prableen Bajpai, the founder of FinFix Research, and Rajul Kotari, the partner of Capital League. They're all going to be joining us. You can come onto the stage. And we're also going to have Shivani Baz with us on the stage in a second to actually conduct and ask all of the questions. Shivani Baz is walking here in a second. Come. All right.
Thank you so much, Toya, for that. And thank you so much to the panelists. And thank you to the audience as well. I know it has been a heated discussion before this. We'll try to calm everybody down and welcome to Rising Bharat Summit and this particular important conversation that we are going to have. And as Toya mentioned that, there has been a rising concern about the fall and the dip in the savings in this nation, especially from the young people. But, there is a dichotomy of sorts, Dhirendra, that we are seeing that a lot of interest among young people who want to invest more, get into stock markets more, want instant gratification, want instant results, returns. And, the most important question and the most asked question that I personally have whenever I speak to young people, people who are 19 years old, 22 years old, is that, which fund gives the maximum returns? Is there a fund which gives 50% returns? Dhirendra, and I know that on Value Research, there are questions like that every day. So, is savings mindset more important? Let me just, begin by asking you that question. As a country, are we looking at a time where that is going to be very important, because we are seeing that young people now in India are not investing and saving that much?
Yes, your investing journey doesn't start till you save. So you can't borrow money and save. You will get bankrupt without having the money. But more importantly, there is a significant change in something that has happened, which was not available when I was growing up. My parents, or most parents in my surrounding, in the vicinity, they had a fairly regular, predictable income for life, which is unlikely. Ever since I started, I was very unsure that, I might be growing, I might be declining, I might be, languishing, but I don't think I got into a career which was a job for a life or any such thing. Then the instant gratification bit. In my times, the waiting time for getting a scooter was 8 years for my father. And for me in Delhi, when I set up Value Research, the waiting time for getting a telephone connection was 9 years from MTNL. If you actually refer to all this, and today if you wish something, you get it. So, this is instant gratification is the new default. Then people are, these are very significant societal changes which we have seen in the last 20, 30 years, which is, lifestyle inflation is considered normal. If you are growing in life, then you are spending your way to demonstrate growth. Otherwise, you are not good enough. You are not prospering. You are not doing. So, that is one. That is another. Third is that, fear of missing out is something real. A lot of people are very upset, very disappointed with themselves. It actually hurts their confidence. If they are not able to demonstrate that they have really achieved it, they are not left out, they are not in the backstage. Then comes spending is visible, savings is not. You can't demonstrate that, you are a thoughtful guy who has a reasonable thing, and if you lose your job, you can take care of yourself. Your dependents can bank on it. So that is thing, and then financial discipline, is a life skill which is not being told. I grew up in a family where my parents, I was unable to discover, or know when I was graduating that whether my parents are well off, poor or rich, because for different things their reaction will be very different. I wouldn't know that. That is not the case. Today it is getting demonstrated. Then comes, schools teach you algebra. They don't teach you affordability. So that's a very significant, so I would not say that, today youth is reckless. I think they are, completely, what to call it, they're untrained in risk. They are, they're unaware of it.
Well, I think that is a very important point, Dhiren, and I would want to go to you, ma'am, with that point particularly, because the world has changed and the teachings and the learnings that kids should have about financial discipline, about investments, about savings probably are not moving as fast as we are seeing the world move. You were absolutely right. There is a social media generation out there which believes that if you have 1 lakh rupees, you should show that you have 1 lakh rupees, right? So that is sort of, there is a sort of gap that exists between that. How do you think financial literacy can be brought as early as possible? Also, how do we use that literacy, that discipline, to make a new generation of youth who are more into savings, into investment, and more thoughtful when it comes to spending?
So you're very right. From the time, like Dheeraj said, we grew up in a situation of scarcity, and now our kids are in a situation of abundance. So that very thought that they have to think twice before buying something or before spending on something, that thoughtfulness is missing. Now, to your question as to how early we can inculcate such kind of habits, I think society on various fronts has to deal with it as a collective force. So first stop is obviously the parents, because kids spend a lot of time with their parents. They learn by example. And I would give my personal example that at home I have 2 boys, 27 and 20. And from a very young age, I opened their bank accounts. I would, anything they would win or, some competition, good marks, you deposit a small amount in their bank account. And then when it would collect to, let's say, like a 5,000, 10,000 kind of an amount, you invest in it. When they would get the portfolio, you sit with them, you show them how your money is growing. That, I gave you a gift of 1,000 and now look, it's looking like, 1,000 something. Similarly, with pocket money, we can teach them budgeting. We can put like a condition that you need to save something from your pocket money. We can reward if they save at the end of the year by giving them some kind of an extra money, which acts like a return. So those kind of steps could be formed in early age. As we grow up, simultaneously, the school is also teaching them something about such things, like if they have a school picnic, then, if there is a budget, then how would the kids like to spend? So in a classroom setting, if they can be explained or, given responsibility, that also it has to be fun. It can't be boring. The moment it becomes boring, the mind tunes off, right? So these are habits which unknowingly then they inculcate of thoughtfulness before spending. And why savings is important? It is linked to sacrificing the current gratification, the consumption, the pleasure you get out of spending your money now. On the other hand, saving it for a future where you can fulfill your ambitions with it. So that is the key, point.
So basically, it shouldn't be how we were taught taxation, because all of us learnt it in school clearly, but when the tax season arrives, we are all looking for help. So probably on that note, I would want to come to you. There is all talk about how we can inculcate this habit, what we should do, what parents should do, what schools should do. But in a generation which is constantly looking at their friends buying bigger cars, buying bigger houses, buying fancy clothes, going abroad, having bigger brands, how do we make it fun, like she said? How do we make it approachable and, aspirational, in a sense that, I invest money or I save money, that's supposed to be something that is good about it. That feeling, I believe, is missing these days. It's more on how much do you spend. It's more on what brands do you wear, what car do you drive. How do you strike that kind of a balance?
I think one of the most scary trends which I feel is there in the society today is the growing comfort with credit and loans. Because most of our pictures that we post, that have gone on a foreign trip is probably out of a personal loan that the person has taken. I know somebody, in fact, my RM from the bank, he came and he said, "Ma'am, kuch bata do, mere finances theek karo." And I said, "Where do you invest? How much?" and all. I said, start with 5,000, you're getting 25, 30, kuch shuru karo. He said, nahi ma'am, maine shaadi ke liye personal loan liya tha, abhi main wo pura kar raha hu. So, an event like marriage, where your budget can be probably from 10,000 to 10 crores to, further figure.
Anything these days.
You have to put a capping. And Shivani, वो जो पुराने टाइम पे कहते थे, जितनी चादर है आपको उतना ही पैर पसारना है. So basically, you need to limit yourself. You have to have a budget. And it's not that you shouldn't buy a fancy handbag or you shouldn't go on a foreign trip, but you should plan for it. And it's really hard in today's world because everything is so instant. So, on nature, it doesn't work. So it's like if you plant a tree, it'll take those 5-10 years to grow. And creating wealth is something similar. And unless and until we learn to keep that patience, become a little uncomfortable with the growing comfort with credit debts, because we don't see affordability with, can I afford a 1 crore home? We see, okay, maybe I can afford a 1 lakh EMI. So the way we check affordability has changed. So at the end of the day, I think it's so important that you start with the basic simple exercise of tracking your expenses, where what is spent. See what can, the leakages are always there in your home budget, you're spending. Put a capping to it. Try and put some money aside in the beginning of the month. Please just usko gayab kar do. Put it in a different bank account. You have to save at least 20-25% of your income. Otherwise, 30 years later, you would repent. A small example, a person, because a lot of young kids are sitting here, a 10,000 SIP started today. Sounds boring, 10,000, 30 years, who's seen 30 years? But let's say you're 25 and you invest till 55. With a 10,000 SIP, you can create about 3.5 crores, which is quite good. If you
now that's a calculation people want to hear, so go on.
If you do a 10% step up, so if you're just increasing your SIP with 10% each year, you can create 8.7 crores, which is not bad. Now let's say another person says, I'm not starting at 25 because I will earn more when I'm older. Because we tend to overestimate our earning capacity and kind of underestimate our future expenditure. That person, let's say, starts 20 years later, has to retire at 55. So starting at 45, 10 years to go. Now when you start with 10,000, you can only create 23 lakhs in those 10 years. Now you'll say, no, but I can do more. Okay, so let's do a 50% step up. Even a 50% step up will give you 1.8 crores. So what that person needs to do is save about 16 times. So 1,60,000 during that 10 year to reach that basic 3.5 crore mark, which the person A was able to do with that 10,000 SIP. But that patience has to be there, Shivani, and it cannot be, it's not something that you can borrow. You need to practice it. It's like meditation. So you have to invest, practice, and I think then only it can happen. Otherwise, we won't have a very healthy financial well-being kind of the youth of today, they won't have that kind of a wellness tomorrow.
Absolutely. Two things that the youth of today wants and needs: meditation and investing patiently. So you touched upon both of them. I would want to come to you, Dhiren, with 2 points that Prableen made. One, the easy access to credit. Is it a boon or a bane? It seems to me like, this becomes a problem while, as she said, now affordability is looked at with the kind of EMI that you can actually afford on a monthly basis and not on the entire sum of money that you are doing. So even though it's very important, it's something that puts money in the hands of people, but where do you think the lag is? What needs to be fixed in this scenario?
No, very little needs to be fixed in this because, it is good to have available credit, but it is not at all good to avail that credit for unnecessary things. It was a great deprivation for the whole generation for the first, 20, 30 years of post-independence that there was no credit available. People could not borrow money. Today we have gone to, so I think, the real problem lies in basic understanding of arithmetic, appreciation of magic of compounding. Financial literacy should start, or, understanding or comprehending that should start in a more visual way, because most of the people who are troubled by their missteps are the guys who are unable to comprehend, what is it? When you go to a Apple store, and when he tells you that, here is this great iPhone 16, and this can do all the magic, and it is extremely tempting. In fact, it has designed to tempt you. Amazing, a store which is very difficult to get out of, and, it is displayed, and there is a whole science and psychology and behavior and design to it. And then when he tells you that, this is not 1.5 lakh rupees, this is 4,300 rupees per month. And you actually forget asking that whether it is for 5 years, 3 years, or 7 years. This is financial illiteracy of an unusual kind. So I think, the root lies in some very basic comprehension of arithmetic. And these values are not built. You will have great apps, you will have great facilitation. And the whole, about financial services, I have my feeling, not feeling, a deep belief that everybody is out there to get you. And if you are not, you have to really start with the premise that what all can go wrong. How will I lose money? Because people lose principle in the first place. In fact, the bigger problem is not this. The bigger problem is before borrowing. Of course, this is one thing which will hold you back, but you still have a different pleasure of at least not being stupid. I think in this country, everybody starts with a life insurance policy at a very young age, when you have virtually no dependents, when you don't need the life insurance. And it is actually, it is an investment plan, substantially, which is packaged as an insurance policy, which people are so committed, and people have such deep belief in it. And people end up earning for their longest term, for their longest term investment, committed investment. The average return on a LIC policy, endowment policy, will be about 3.5%. You lose 2/3 of your, you are unable to beat inflation with this investment for the longest term committed disciplined investment. Then comes, in this country, everybody who gets into the organized sector starts with his EPF account. That is mandatory for the employer to open it. You will have one.
I do.
And that is where, the longest term investment happens to be substantially fixed income. And which means that whatever you are left with, most people are unable to get, they don't have any, beyond this mandatory savings. A good part of the population is unable to save in the initial 5-10 years. That is the design of the finance. That is the design of the career. That in our early phases of our career, while you are setting up home, you are getting married, you are having children, you are trying to put together the down payment for the house, what are you left with? And the only thing which is going is not actually able to demonstrate to you that, magic happens with your investment, because it's not getting. So the longest term investment that we make is into fixed income. Yeah. Then we end up with, some opportunistic investment in equity, and that is why we end up being a speculator with our equity investments. And that is why you get this question that, how to make quick money with this which fund. In fact, the which fund is a gentleman. The real commandos are actually, getting into F&O, and, they're
F&O.
92% of the population is actually losing money in a guaranteed way.
So there seems to be then a lack of understanding of the financial world as a whole. As you said, you have to get into this space thinking everybody is out there to get you. And then even if you lose any sort of opportunity to make money, at least you're like, I was not a fool. This could have been worse. So I made a smart decision. I'll come back to you, Rajul, with this, that, this financial discipline is a secondary thing. First, there should be an awareness. One thing that I've personally realized and understood with my friends and family whenever I've told them to go to a financial advisor is the first step whenever they come to me, as you said, whoever meets says where to invest, what to do, how to get 50%. Is the very fact that we don't have that kind of money that we go to a financial advisor. What is that about? How do we fix this mindset that I'll have to have at least 1 lakh rupees in my account to go to an advisor to start my investments? How do we deal with that situation? How do you deal with that situation?
So actually, that is a very reasonable question, given India's population and the number of financial advisors out there. Obviously, it is not possible to provide customized solutions for each one of them, and nobody today has the time also, these individuals who would like to invest. There comes in the role of these fintech platforms where they have been investing, but these have no guardrails in place. You can open an account on any fintech and link it to your bank account and just start investing. There is no framework, there is no structure that unless you do your risk profile, unless you figure out what is my time horizon, what are my goals, for which purpose I'm investing, you can straight away choose a stock, an IPO, a mutual fund, and with very little, thinking, thoughtfulness, again, I would say, it is done in a very, very ad hoc manner. So for these fintechs, I don't want to blame them. It is a game changer, actually, because they can reach millions of people in one go with a very, very standard solution, which will actually work for a lot of people. If you just say that, my time horizon is 5 years, 10 years, I want to save for my child's education, they can create a plan for you. But most people do not avail of it. And there is nothing which debars them from not investing in a stock without going through this process.
So basically, just to interrupt you in between, these fintechs, the fintech revolution that we are seeing is not actually that great without the financial awareness that we must have.
That is true.
Is what you're saying. Please continue, ma'am.
So yes, so first comes awareness, thoughtfulness, and the same platforms can be, leveraged to create that awareness. At the same time, I think it is the responsibility of institutions like banks, AMCs. Today, what are the youngsters most influenced by? Even when they're buying something, consuming something, they're influenced by these so-called influencers on social media that, okay, which, sneakers or which dress or which even makeup stuff I should buy. And they will watch reels endlessly and be driven by purchases based on that. Similarly, why don't we leverage similar influencers to create that financial literacy? Let's try, rather than teaching it through the typical book method, which these people do not, this generation would not so, openly listen to. Get them where they listen, where they're present, where they're applying their mind. So today there are a few financial influencers, but it is like a drop in the ocean. For every 1,000 influencers whom these millions of brands use to influence their sales, you have a handful of financial influencers. So we would need more of them. People like us can cater to a very, very small segment, and that is difficult to replicate without the use of technology. And since there is a phone now in everybody's hand, why not use it for, creating that literacy as well as making your thoughtful, mindful decisions which are linked to your risk appetite, which are linked to your goals, and giving them enough sense of what are the risks there.
But that's the point. How many young people do understand risk profile? Because unless the market falls, nobody is scared of anything. Everybody thinks they're going to make money. Prableen, how do you think about it? You deal with a lot of young people. Until last month, everybody thought that they're going to be millionaires by the end of this year. And today, everybody's sort of asking the same question again. Should we stop our SIPs right now? Is this the right time? How do you deal with these questions? And what is the right answer for that, for the benefit of the audience sitting over here?
So ideally, we should be clubbing ourselves as a risk-averse, moderate risk, or a high-risk investor. But interestingly, our risk profile keeps changing with the markets. So when the markets are doing well, we're all okay with a small cap, and we want those 104% returns because we're all smitten by the recency bias because we see what has been there in the recent past 6 months and 1 year data. And that should not be the case, of course, Shivani. So what we really need is that you have to know what your risk appetite is, and you only get to know or realize it when the markets are in times like we are in at present. So I think in the last 6 months, a lot of people, 7 months, must have realized that, okay, maybe I'm not okay with a 20% fall or a 25, 30% fall in my portfolio. So I think you sometimes need these hard times in the markets to realize what your your actual risk appetite. It is a, it's a calculation, it's a process actually through questions which you should be answering and coming to your risk profile. But if you haven't done well, then the natural way of learning is, markets teach you then during such times. But ideally, if you're investing in the markets, then you can't be a fair weather friend. Dukh sukh, dono mein aapko saath dena hai market ka, and then only the markets aapka saath dengi. So if you are continuing with your SIPs when the markets are going up, you have to continue with your SIPs when the markets are down, and you have to complete that cycle. So
That's the point
really,
of the SIP.
really important.
The SIP is based on the premise of rupee cost averaging, which we borrowed from dollar cost averaging. How do you average? You have to buy, like she says, when markets are going up and when markets are going down. If you only invest in while the markets are going up and stop when the markets fall, then actually you are at a loss. You've invested in a rising market.
In a very easy manner, when my friends ask me, I say, when do you go to a mall to buy more stuff? When there is a sale. So, we all have to look at it like there's a sale in the market, so you put more money. We are running out of time, but I'm going to put the last question to the entire panel. I'm going to start with you, Dhiren. UPI has been a game changer in this country, and I would want to ask you, in a precise, concise way, what do you think will it take for the country's youth to move from UPI to SIP? Just like we are enthusiastic about quick sending money, how do we do that with the SIP?
No, I think, the kind of thing that has happened with SIP, I don't think it is difficult. People have to go through this cycle, and there's a growing awareness, and I think we will have the next generation of apps which will nudge you on every spend. Your UPI spending can well be a point of nudging you that, okay, what will be the worth of this in 10 years' time? And, depending on the kind of, because there are necessary spending being done through UPI. And then there are not so important, and if there is an app which is enabling that, which is telling you that, okay, you are having this pizza, but do you know this will be worth your dentist treatment when you turn 60? Then I think you'll get little, it could be a natural, technology is not a solution.
From a positive reinforcement, what we need now, the next generation, is a negative reinforcement. Rajul, from UPI to SIP, how do you think SIP can become the new next boom?
There are already some ideas out there. So I know of a company called, I think, Change Jar. What it does is that every time you spend and whatever is the change, you round it off, and that amount is invested in gold. And there are a couple more like that where, you can round it up, top it up. And there, when you collect it, after 6 months, you see, oh, you have, collected a substantial sum. Nudging is another thing, like you said. Even, just think of it. These days, we have so much coffee, which we never had, the older generation. And each coffee mug at the Starbucks costs $300-400. Assuming we are having 2 cups a week, even if we give a 1, in 5 years, if you invest that money at 12%, that will be a good amount, like 1.5 lakhs.
Absolutely.
And you could fulfill a bigger dream with that kind of money. So we need to learn to sacrifice a little bit, but on the tech platform, it will go hand in hand. If you go to a Paytm and, it says you've made some payment, it says you've saved so much. Even on, let's say, something like Milk Basket, that you buy vegetables, you've saved 100 rupees today because of discounts. Can it ask you a question that, would you like to invest this money, what you've saved? And if you click yes, it should be very easy that it goes into some index fund, for example. Very basic, simple.
Yeah, so basically the consonants of apps. We are really now, going into the fintech world. Probably in your last thoughts about how do we, make the youth of this country focus, and, how do we make aspirational the thought of investing and saving?
At the end of the day, we can use all the help apps, financial literacy, knowledge, but it has to come from within, Shivani. There has to be the realization you have to sacrifice. It's not going to be easy. So even if I decide that, we decide that I need to lose 1 kg or 2 kgs, we all struggle with weight issues. There is a sacrifice which goes into it. You have to diet or you need to exercise. So wealth creation or any sort of future financial saving cannot be done without sacrificing something today. So there has to be some sacrifice, and then only it can happen. But as, because we're talking about SIP, I think the youth of today, the example of Chinese bamboo, you sow it for 2, 3, 4 years also, there is no crop on the surface. By the 5th year is when you see the bamboo grow up, and like about 80 feet. So that is something which the youth needs to remember, that aap karte raho, you keep doing your SIPs, and for an amount, Shivani, which can be kept aside. You know, after you have the contingency fund, so you don't break your SIP. And then that patience that has to be learned. Without that, I don't think we can achieve anything.
So basically, the end thought is that we need to save before we consume, rather than consuming and then thinking about saving investment. Thank you so much, Dhiren, Rajul, and Prableen. Thank you so much to our audience.
Thank you,
There was a lot of insight today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening, you guys.